Well, it's time to replace my home hot water system, and I've got a choice. Do I stay with the solar hot water system that I've got, or do I try out one of the highly popular heat pump systems these days? Do I go all out electric, gas, or do I try something like a wood heater? So with so many options out there, in today's video we're going to go through the pros and cons of each of these different types of systems. We'll look at the prices of the systems, and I'll also talk why I'm leaning in a particular way. So stay with us. This video is brought to you by Regen EV Charging Install, Australia's residential and commercial EVSE installation specialists. Links to these sponsors are in the show notes. Hi, my name's Greg and welcome to the channel where we talk electric vehicles and also some other enviro-friendly and sustainable home living stuff. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button and it's great to have you with us. So why am I replacing my hot water system? Well, it's a pretty common reason. I've got a leaking tank. So up towards the top there, you can see that there's been a leak in the tank and it's leaking water down the side in a couple of different locations there. So the likely reason for the tank developing a leak is me not replacing the anode. So this is what an anode looks like. This is a new one, and it's a type of metal that actually corrodes before your tank corrodes. So that is usually the reason hot water tanks corrode out. Now, if you're in a hard water area like I am here in Logan in Queensland, you should at least check and probably replace those anodes every 2 years. If you're in a soft water area, I believe Melbourne's got reasonably soft water, you can probably get away with it every 4 years. But I was a bit slack recently and I haven't done it, hence it's corroded out. Now look, I can't complain. The tank's done about 16 years, so that's pretty good for a hot water system, so I'm not complaining about that. But look, we're getting blown away out here and it's a bit late in the afternoon, so we're going to head inside shortly and we'll have a look at some other reasons for failures of tanks, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty detail of comparing systems. Wow, it was windy out there, so good to be inside. So we mentioned that tanks are the most common reasons for hot water systems to fail, but there is others. So if you've got a heat pump system, quite often the compressor in that system will give up the ghost, or the condenser, which is the outside unit that sort of has the fins in it and the fan. If you've got like a wood heater or a slow combustion stove, sometimes the fireboxes can burn out, elements can burn out, and also gas burners, but generally those things can be replaced. So what are some of the key things you should be looking at when you're considering a new hot water system? Well, obviously the big one is, how big is your family, or how much hot water do you need? Another one you might consider is the energy efficiency or the water rating of the system. Do you want an on-roof system or a split system on the ground? I'd be looking at the warranties and the type of maintenance and backup support the suppliers give. Do you have a single or multi-storey home? Is there a new build or an existing home you're looking to put the hot water system on? And also the location of the unit. Is it easy to get to, or is it difficult? Is it inside in a cupboard, or is it outside? And do you actually need to store hot water, or could you have an on-demand system that just heats the water as you use it? Another consideration is the cost, and don't forget it's not just the upfront cost. So obviously that's important, but it's also the ongoing maintenance cost of the unit you might be thinking of. So your upfront costs will obviously be your fuel or the energy that's used, and I've got some ideas on how you could save some money in that space. But also, do you need to reconfigure your plumbing? Is it going to cost a whole lot of money to get the plumber to reposition pipes and that sort of stuff? The electrician to reconfigure electricity and cable runs? And do you need to change the elements, and could you get to that easily? And also the anode, which we mentioned before. Is that easy to get to replace or not? Because if you put it in a location that makes it difficult to replace, you're less likely to pay a plumber to replace it, and you might be in the situation like me where your tank starts leaking. So there's some of the key considerations for me. If you've got any more that I've missed, please put them in the comments to help the community out. Now, look, I live in southeast Queensland here in Brisbane, so I've got quite a lot of options here. So we could look at gas, so we could replace our solar with LPG. We can't use natural gas because we don't have piped gas to our location, but we could go LPG, and I could have a storage unit that heats up 200 or 300 litres of water and stores it, or I could have a continuous flow gas. Now the pros of these units, they're the cheapest up front and there's lots of choices in the brands. They're generally pretty long lasting and they don't require much maintenance, particularly the on-demand ones that just heat the water as you use it. And they provide a quick, continuous supply of hot water. Now look, I had a look at some prices and they started around $800 plus installation, but they do go up to around $3,600, so they can also be expensive up front. Now the cons of these units, they've got high and increasing fuel costs. So as we know, gas, whether it be LPG or natural gas, is going up in price all the time, and potentially you could have a disruption of supply. So that's a negative. They do have negative health effects. They're not great for the environment. So they're the reasons I may not go with gas. Now there's another option I could use here in the city, although this one's highly unlikely because I don't have a easy supply of the fuels, but I could go with like a wood heater, a slow combustion type stove option. I've looked around and the prices for those generally start about $2,500 and they go up to around $8,000, and I'm sure you could probably find some that are more. Look, the pros of these types of units, they're generally very quiet, they're long lasting, they require little maintenance, and it's pretty simple tech. And they're perfectly suited to those colder type climates where you might be heating a room as well as heating your water or cooking. So great for that sort of climate. The cons of these units, they're generally expensive up front, not as many brands here in Australia to choose from. The fuel is getting harder to get and more expensive if you need to buy it. It's great if you've got a farm and you've got endless access to wood, for instance, that's fine. But if you're buying it, it's not cheap to get good quality stuff. Again, not great for the environment with the emissions. So next up, we've got resistive element electric hot water. So these are the stock standard ones you see. Generally, you've got the big water tank, it has a resistive element in it. And because I've got excess solar energy from my solar PV system, this is an option that I'm going to seriously look at. And again, they come in a storage variety, or you can get one that provides continuous instant heating as you use the water. Again, they're cheap, generally start around $600 and they go up to around $2,500. So the pros, again, they're a silent operation, so you don't hear them working away. They're cheap up front and there's lots of choice and brands in Australia, generally reasonably long lasting and require little maintenance, especially again, those on-demand units. And they can be put indoors, so you can have them in a laundry or in a cupboard or a second bathroom, that sort of stuff. They do provide generally a quick, continuous type hot water supply, which is great. And you do have the option, as I mentioned, to connect them to your solar PV, so you can power them from renewable energy through the day, or if you're in a colder climate with off-peak electricity, so cheaper rates overnight. But for me, I'd be connecting them to my solar PV. Now the cons, of course, potentially high fuel costs. So again, not as applicable for me, but if you're in an area where you do need to buy the electricity, again, not great for the environment if your electricity supply is primarily coming from coal or gas, which is becoming less these days. We are moving as a grid here in Australia more to renewable energy. But other than that, the old school resistive electric hot water isn't probably a bad option. So my second last option is a solar thermal hot water system. Now that's exactly the same as what I've got. So basically you have flat panels or evacuated tubes. The sunlight heats up the water and it's pretty basic and pretty easy. Now those prices range from about $3,500 to $7,000 here in Australia. And they can be gas or electric boosted. So obviously if you have rainy, overcast weather, you do need to generally boost it with electricity or gas to make sure you've got hot water. Now again, the pros, they're silent, so you don't hear these things running. They're very efficient. They're generally long lasting. There is a good choice of brands and models here in Australia. They've got average maintenance, depending whether you're going with a split system or an on-roof system. And that again comes down to the simplicity of the technology, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in another video when I'm making my final choice. Also, you can claim some rebates. So as most people will know, at the moment there's an Australian federal government rebate for home batteries. Well, you can still get them for solar PV systems and solar or heat pump hot water systems, so that's a benefit. They're primarily suited to sunny locations, so my location here in southeast Queensland would be absolutely perfect. They do, however, like everything, have some cons, so they're expensive up front, so you need to have that extra dollars up front. And on that note, a lot of banks and financial institutions do provide a slightly better loan rate if you do need to borrow the money. So if you're doing sort of any sustainability or efficiency upgrades on your house and you need to borrow the money, make sure you have a look at those loans for those better interest rates. Weight on the roof, so that is the reason I only have a 200 litre one on the roof of my house currently, as you've seen before outside. They are quite heavy, so that's a consideration if you're putting one on the roof. Potentially higher install costs, and maybe not as many plumbers actually know how to install them. So they're not quite as common as the next one we'll talk about now, which is heat pumps. So yeah, heat pumps are all the rage now. For the last couple of years, there has been an explosion in the brands and models of heat pumps available, which is very interesting because heat pumps have been around for a lot of years. And I'll put a little screenshot up there on just how they work. But basically they're exactly the same as the way that air conditioner that's behind me, and I'm embarrassed to say I do actually have it on this evening because it is a very humid and muggy night here in Queensland. I try and limit the use of the ACs when I can, especially when the sun's down. But they work on exactly the same principle. So instead of heating or cooling the room, they're heating a tank of hot water. So the technology's been around for a very long time. So they're nothing new, but it's just being applied more recently in the last few years to heating hot water. Now, there's a good choice of brands, as we mentioned. They are very efficient as well. And another benefit is you can link them to smart home type software. You can have apps and controllers and all that sort of stuff. So they're very well adapted to that type of technology. And as we mentioned before, you can also claim some rebates. But they do have some cons. They can be noisy, particularly the cheaper models. So you've got to be careful in a lot of modern homes where you've got homes very close together. If it's outside somebody's bedroom window and it's running all night, they may not be happy. They do have more tech in them, and they do run a lot harder than air conditioners. So where you might be familiar with an air conditioner and you've got 10, 15, 20 years of life out of an air conditioner, you probably will not get that out of a heat pump hot water system because they work a lot harder. They work every day, obviously. The more water you use, the more they need to work, and they work year round, whereas a air conditioner usually just works in a warm climate to cool, in a cold climate to heat, so they may only be on 6-7 months of the year, whereas your hot water system is running all the time. And the other thing on that is there is some very poor quality ones getting around, so really do your research if you're looking at those, because those poor quality ones have very short lifespans. And again, the install cost might be a little bit higher, depending on your configuration and where you put them, etc. So just keep that in mind. And the final thing is they're not as suited as cold climates because they're actually sucking heat out of the ambient temperature in the air. And if you're in a very cold climate, they will work a lot harder to do that. There is good quality systems around that are more expensive that can do cold climates, but generally they're not as suited. Okay, so a couple of disclaimers on that. All the prices are for the units only. It doesn't include installation because everyone's installation is different, therefore your costs are different, so you'll need to add that. And it's before any rebates, so each state and territory often has different rebates, and each system will have different rebates applying to it, so you'll need to check into that yourself. And all the systems that I've quoted those prices, they all meet Australian standards. So again, be careful that you're not buying any Alibaba sort of stuff that doesn't meet the Australian standards, because you probably won't get warranties, and if you have any insurance issues or anything, that won't be covered. So it's more trouble than it's worth, a lot of that cheaper stuff. Now, as I mentioned, these points are all generalizations as well. So if you have had a different experience, whether that's good or bad, or there's some things I've missed, please put it in the comments section. It really helps out the community. And I'm just coming from my background and what I've experienced, etc. So I am sure that I've missed some super critical points that would be really helpful, that if you shared them in the comments, other viewers will be able to see. So to close out the considerations and options, there's a couple of things that I come up with that you may or may not have thought about. Now, these won't apply to everybody. It depends on your personal circumstances and feelings. But the emissions over the lifetime of the unit, that's something that concerns me. So the type of unit it is, the emissions that would have been generated in the making of the unit, the transporting of the unit, and then how long the unit's going to last, because obviously if the unit lasts a long time, you're not recycling things and having to buy new ones. So for me, that is a reasonably important consideration. And another one that's closely related is the disposal or the recycling at end of life. So nothing lasts forever. So is it easy to recycle at end of life? Are you going to need to pay someone to take it away, or will they come and pick it up and maybe give you a couple of dollars for it? Or could it actually be reused? Could some of the components actually be reused in another setting or another life? So for me, again, that's a consideration. The third-party tech that can be linked to improve it. So for some people, again, the heat pump ones might be a big consideration if they've got a smart home control system and they want to be able to integrate that into it, or they've got a solar system and again, somehow they want to integrate it within that. And again, I've got a tip on how you can quite cheaply do that without any of that integration, and maybe better use your solar. So keep your eye out, that'll be in another video. Now, warranties, of course, is also a big one. Now, there's a lot of fine print with these warranties, so you really want to have a good look at it and don't just read the headline. Now, I've done a quick Google search, and the best warranty I could come up with seemed to be on the Sandon heat pumps. Now, they've got a 15-year warranty on the tank. Now that is a great headline, but when you look at the fine print, there's a 10-year replacement on the tank and 5 years pro rata. So if it starts leaking in year 12, you won't get a new tank, you'll get a pro-rated value of the life of that tank. If it fails at 9 years, they'll just give you a new tank. But again, it's not as good as the headline at 15, so just read between the lines. The heat pump, that has a 6-year heat pump and labour warranty, and I believe that is just the straight 6 years. But the valves and connections and all that sort of stuff with the hot water system, they will have a lot shorter warranty, so make sure you have a look at all those different components. Now, of course, that Sandon system is priced around $6,000, so you would expect a reasonably good warranty with it. I looked at some others that weren't so good. One that popped up was a Chromogen units. Now, outside Victoria, apparently they have a pretty poor warranty. They're only giving 5 years on the tank. So if it fails within 5 years, they'll give you a new tank, but the labour on that is only 12 months. So anything over 12 months from when you buy it, they'll replace the tank within the 5 years, but you're up for the labour. Whereas with the Sandon one, they would actually cover the full labour up to 10 years and a percentage for the next 5. So again, the labour can be expensive, as we know these days, so make sure you know whether it's just covering the product and the labour or a combination of both. And the Chromogen heat pump was only 3-year warranty on that unit, and the labour on that one is also only 1 year. And the electronics and the controller on that one also only had a 12-month warranty. Now keep in mind, these units are priced between $2,500 and just under $4,000. So a warranty of that length on a product that costs that isn't that great. So I'd be looking around for other options. Well, as you've probably guessed from the location where I live and what we've covered in this video, my option shortlist is probably going to be a replacement solar system or an electricity system, whether that's resistive element and I use my solar PV to heat it through the day, or whether I go with a heat pump. And I'll be doing another video on that. So again, if you'd like to know what I chose and talking a little bit more about my buying experience with the product and also the supplier and stuff, please click that subscribe button. Well, that's it for another video. Thanks to all my subscribers. I really love you guys. This is why I do the videos, and I really hope you guys find it helpful. Of course, a big shout out to our channel sponsor, Regen EV. If you're looking for an EV charger to be installed anywhere in Australia, give Aaron a call from Regen EV. And if you like the video, by all means, shout me a coffee. I don't mind a little bit of caffeine. And sorry guys, I'm always plugging that, but it does help pay for the expensive camera gear, the mic gear, the editing software and all that sort of stuff. So really appreciate any support there. And as I mentioned, don't forget to leave your comments. I really like hearing from viewers on their experiences and what's worked for them and what hasn't. Share it with the community. If you've had a bad experience, we want to share that so others don't also experience that. And if you've had a good experience, let's shout from the rooftops those products and companies that really give good service. And look, check out my website. You might have seen it over my shoulder here on the screen. If you're looking to buy an EV, I've got a EV library up there that covers the EVs that are available in Australia in full detail, so lots of specifications and photos. And of course, you can book a one-on-one consultation if you'd like to have a chat and have some of your questions answered. You can also book that on the website. Other than that, take care, stay safe, look after your friends and family, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.